daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out as the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone, AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the description to learn more about Zencastr.
Who was that guy reading out that advert? He sounds super professional. We should get him on.
He sounds rubbish, doesn't he?
Get him on.
Okay, anyway, let's talk more about Sunday because we've spent a lot of this time talking about United's problems. But I think it's fair to say with 3 losses in a row in all comps for Liverpool, this is not the time for us to be having a big derby come around after an international break because Jesse, we spoke about this numerous times before the international break. If you're Arne Slot, what do you say to the managers? Sorry, what do you say to the players and all of this? But, I mean, we mentioned McAllister, for example. We haven't seen the same McAllister this season. We've had these new players that have come in. Wirtz has struggled. Isak hasn't got a goal yet in the Premier League. I know it's early, but, you know. So this is the time that if something is to change for Man United, it's the time for them to be playing against us and for them to really make a statement in playing us as well.
Yeah, look, I think this. I said at the at the beginning, I think this is a massive game for both teams for different reasons. I think, you know, we've spoken about Manchester United. I think it is a great opportunity. It really is. I know that United fans are thinking, thinking really negatively, but I can tell you right now, those players. Ruben Amorim will be believing that they can get a result at Anfield. One, because it's a derby, anything can happen, and he'll be looking to last season saying, look, this is how close we came. And that was a team that won the league, and we came to Anfield and we nearly won the game. We should have won the game, right? So he will be believing that they can get a result at Anfield. And for Liverpool, this is a fantastic opportunity to get a massive win at Anfield. And when I say massive, I'm not talking about scoreline. You know, beating Manchester United, it doesn't matter where the teams are in the league. It's just, you know, the place will just erupt. And I think the boost that it will give to the club, to the team, to the manager, it's almost like a fresh start now. We've come back from an international break. It's like a restart. And it can go one of two ways, right? If United turn up and they play anything like they did last season, there could be an upset. You know, there could be a United win or a draw, and then that kind of, you know, it's 2 Premier League defeats in a row, and then another one or a draw, and all of a sudden, you know, things aren't looking that great. But if we can beat Manchester United, then all of a sudden, you know, we've had 2 losses, but we're still at least second in the league, and we've got a win against United. And now let's just go again.
I mean, with regards to this Liverpool team, I think it's a lot of our issues are with our midfield balance. And I've said this before. I mean, you're seeing either McAllister or Gravenberch in midfield becoming incredibly exposed and having to do a lot of the work themselves. I'm just hoping Arne Slot has gone away in this international break and had a look at how we played and see how can we make this more balanced and how more like last season. And I think a lot of that is just to do with having the 2 pivots again, because it worked so well last season. And I don't really know why we stopped doing it. I don't know if it's to give more support to Wirtz going forward. But it's just a weird transition from last season where it seems like we've become one block of defence, one block of attack, and then just McAllister or Gravenberch completely alone in the middle. Why do you think he has done this, Jesse? Do you think it's to try and help Wirtz settle?
I don't just think it's Wirtz. I think Wirtz gets a lot of attention because of his price tag, etc. But I think you've got to remember that we've brought in a lot of new players. We've got 2 new fullbacks. We've got a new midfielder. We've got almost an entirely new forward line, and it's just going to take time for these players to gel. And he's in this kind of weird position because last season he had a really settled team because we had a relatively small squad, and he was pretty much playing the same team every week. The benefit of that was that we got a fantastic start and we managed to win the Premier League. But once we got to February, March, that team did run out of legs. It ran out of gas.
Absolutely.
And we couldn't compete in the Champions League. We got beat by Newcastle in the League Cup final. And since then, we got over the line. We won the Premier League, but we didn't play that well in the second half of the season. And so now you've got the situation where he's got a bigger squad, but that now the challenge is that you're not going to be playing the same team week in, week out. And you've got new players now who have got to come in and they've got to gel. So that midfield position, I think you're right, Louie. It was so settled last season. McAllister, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, those were the 3 tried and tested. And, they played pretty much every game. But we simply will not be able to play those players every single game if we've got any realistic ambition of, one, retaining the Premier League and then going further in the Champions League and trying to win the Champions League. We have to mix it up. And the balance for Arne Slot is, what games do you choose to mix it up? Because there just are no easy games in the Premier League anymore. You look at the teams like Crystal Palace, look at Brentford, Brighton. Look at Sunderland have come up. The Premier League is so competitive now, and it completely flies in the face of a lot of the criticism last season when we won the Premier League. Oh, this is not a very strong Premier League just because of Manchester City. Yeah, but it's not just Manchester City now. I think there's a much more of a level playing field across the whole of the Premier League, and so Slot's biggest challenge now is trying to get a balance in that team, trying to bed players in, get some rhythm and consistency, and not lose games at the same time. And that's really difficult to do.
Well, the reason I mentioned Wirtz is just because he's such a different number 10 to Szoboszlai, who did come under a lot of flack last season, and now he's looking like a far better option than Wirtz based on his positioning in the final third. Wirtz doesn't get the ball as much. When he does, I mean, we've seen his ball control. It's terrific, his first touch. But he just doesn't really... He's not as physical as Szoboszlai. Szoboszlai is not afraid to get stuck in. Wirtz maybe is just better with the ball at his feet in tight areas. But when it comes to the physical side of football, he hasn't got that as much. And that's
not yet. He's
why...
22. He's 22.
I know he's 22, but Szoboszlai is not that much older than him. And it's also the fact that now he's having to get some more support in that final third from a McAllister or a Gravenberch just outside of the box in those little pockets. So that's why I mentioned him. But then we got the other issue of our fullbacks. I mean, Milos Kerkhez has had a very strange start to the season. And I'd just love to see Robertson play a bit more, because whenever Robertson has come off the bench, we've looked more positive, and he's been helping out Gakpo, who at times has been a bit isolated on the left-hand side.
Yeah. And I think you also see how much we miss Luis Diaz down that left as well. Not just in terms of his attacking ability, but the guy's intensity in terms of tracking back and almost acting as another fullback was just, it was just phenomenal. Again, he was another kind of Szoboszlai kind of player in terms of his engine and his work rate. And that is something that we've missed this season. And again, there's that balance issue. Kerkhez has come in. He's a very young player, and it's going to take him time to adjust to the pressure of playing at Liverpool. When he was at Bournemouth, he was outstanding, absolutely fantastic, but the spotlight wasn't on him. If he had a bad game, or if he got a booking, or missed time tackle, it was like, okay, move on. It's nothing to see here. At
I just
Liverpool,
don't think that's an excuse when you're playing in the Premier League, because
no, it's not an excuse. I think it's a reason that you've got to give players. You can't. Andy Robertson, it took him 6 months just to even get into the team. Jurgen Klopp didn't pick him for about 3 or 4 months when he signed him. Kerkhez has been thrown straight in. You can say that's a good decision or not. I personally would have started with Robertson, and then kind of ease Kerkhez in. But look, we are where we are now. I think that he's a very, very good player. But I just think, again, he's a young player. It's not an excuse. It's just a fact that young players do make mistakes. And he is one of those players that's going to make mistakes. One of the things that he's got is that he's quite rash in the tackle. He's picked up a string of kind of first half bookings, which immediately then puts him under pressure. And then Arnie Slot thinks, we can't afford to go down to 10 men. So he gets hooked and Robertson comes on. So there are issues in the team, but I just don't think that those issues are as big, bearing in mind that we're second in the Premier League, 1 point behind Arsenal. This is not a crisis. I think most teams would be quite happy to have that kind of crisis. And look, Sam's smiling. Look, Sam, I remember, back in the day when Manchester United were flying, and this would happen to them. They'd have a couple of bad results, and it's like, oh, what's happened to Manchester United? They're slipping. Their standards are slipping. No, it's not. They're just human beings, and sometimes these things take a bit of time. I think that they're going to iron out, but Sunday's game is going to be a big, big test for whoever plays in those fullback positions. If it's Kerkhez, and if Ahmad's running at him, he can't afford to get an early booking, because Ahmad is a good player, and when his tail is up, he can, and he showed last season that he had a great game at Anfield.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is on your fullbacks is, I don't like them at all in that system, to be honest. If anything, I think they would benefit from a United system.
Yeah, right.
I agree. Yeah,
fullbacks going up and down and less defensive.
You can't have them.
Responsibility. So yeah, we can swap if you want. But yeah, no. In terms of what you guys have said, I think one of your biggest problems, and just to piggyback off a couple of things you said there, in terms of Kerkhez being young, Frimpong being young, Wirtz being young, Ekitike, Isak, I think somehow, and look, you guys had to buy in the summer, don't get me wrong, you had to fill out a few positions, squad depth and so on. But I think somehow you've let yourself slip into a sort of a transition that some of these players almost need one season to sort of get used to the team and get used to playing the system. And it's almost like you can't have that season of transition when you're pushing for the league. I mean, you just won the league last year. You can't be in a transition. There's expectation on you to win the league again. And if you've got 4 or 5 players who are in that transition getting used to the system, I think that's one of your biggest problems. I think another problem as well is Slot sort of last year got rid of that yo-yo basketball high intensity, well, still high intensity, but less so than under Klopp, I would say. He got rid of that mentality and he was more rigid and more structured and more would sort of maybe a less entertaining game, but you'd win 1-0 or 2-0 and solid performance. Whereas this season, you've sort of slipped back into that Klopp style of mentality where it's back and forward. It's sort of, it's entertaining for the neutral. But if I was a Liverpool fan, I'd go, actually, I think I prefer a bit less entertainment. But last season, we just sort of win games out. And look, you won a league under Klopp as well doing that. And you can definitely still win the league doing that as well. I feel like, you have the players to do so. But I do feel like, you've slipped back into that mentality, which ultimately you're going to lose more games playing that style of football. You just will. But I think those two things really, you're in a bit of a transition with some of the players you've brought in, and also the style of players has changed. So I think that they're two things really. But what I will say on Arne Slot is, I mean, unbelievable coach, unbelievable to win your league in the first season. I mean, it's unbelievable what he's done to
The
be
way he
honest.
deals with press as well, I absolutely love as well.
Yeah, and,
Great man.
But yeah, I did have to laugh, Louie, when you mentioned about your midfield problems. Well, you think you've got problems, pal?
In comparison to last season, I'll just leave it at that.
But Sam, you made a good point about the signings, because I remember, obviously, like, you know, we were on lots of different kind of club, you know, WhatsApp groups and chats, and I remember when we signed Wirtz, it was like, oh yeah, you know, fantastic. And then we signed Frimpong, we're like, oh, you know, we've got a fullback, you know, fantastic. And then we signed Kerkhez, and I'm like, oh bloody hell, we're really going for it this summer transfer. And then we signed another player. And I remember saying, you know what, this makes great headlines, you know, there's a huge positivity in signing new players. But I remember distinctly saying, I'm a bit concerned that we've kind of tipped over the kind of edge of maybe signing too many players in one go. And yeah, you just, you know, what you said about the transition just reminded me of that. And I think it is a fair point, but I think the club know what they're doing. It's a strategy. It's not scattergun. It's not, let's just buy a whole bunch of players. They're buying players now for the next 4 or 5 years now, a settled team in the way that we had the previous 5 seasons.
And look, you boys aren't going to like what I'm about to say, but if this was United and we had bought Wirtz for 120, Isak for 100 and near 120 again, and Ekatike for however much. Granted, he's actually been very good. But Isak and Wirtz, for example, if that was United and they've started the way they've started, oh my God, the stick they would be getting right now. But for whatever reason, and look, don't get me wrong,
Isak hasn't been bad.
He's
just not absolutely taken off.
Yeah, but
like
if you're spending that amount of money, you've got to see results straight away. I'm sorry.
Sam, I'll tell you what the reason is, because you said if it was Manchester United, but for some reason Liverpool are doing it. I'll tell you the reason. It's very simple: is that we're doing it from a base of being champions.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. And so if Manchester United go out and blow £80 million on someone like Anthony, then Manchester United have got to go and start challenging, or at least get into the Champions League. There's this kind of upward progression. But Liverpool, to do that, we're doing it from a base of success. And so there is always that to fall back on. There isn't that kind of, look, they're just blowing money away again like they did last season or the season before, and they're just going further down. So I think the context is different. And the irony is here is Liverpool, Manchester United. I think one of the reasons why Liverpool and United are such great rivals and there's such an intensity is that they very often mirror each other. You know, their history. You know, people always go on about, you didn't win the league for 30 years, but they don't forget, or they don't bring up the fact that when Manchester United won that Premier League title, that was the first one in 26 years. Right, so both clubs have had these moments where they're just barren years for a long time, and Liverpool were doing this. They were splurging money on all sorts of players in the 90s and the early 2000s, trying to catch up, because you can't get the elite players, and so you've got to get the secondary players, and you've got to play over the odds for those secondary players, and so you're swimming against the tide. And so I hear what you're saying, Sam. But I think the reason why is it's just the context is different.
Yeah, obviously context does matter, and that's probably definitely is why there's sort of that leeway there with that. But what happens if you don't win the league, and if you don't win what you're expected to win? Then we need to start asking serious questions, because you can say, it's because we win things and blah blah blah. But even United I know over a long period of time, but on singular players haven't spent the money like you have on Wirtz and Isak and all the in one summer as well. So for you to be questioning, oh, we're going into a derby, not greatest form, blah blah blah. If you said that at the start of the season with the players you bought, you would be saying, oh, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. So yeah, I do hear your point, and it's a fair point, but give it a couple of weeks or months time, and if nothing's improved, I want to be hearing the
You can come back. But I tell you something: if we don't win the league and we don't win the Champions League, there's not going to be there's going to be no hounding of Arne Slot. He's going to be under no pressure. He's going to get a new contract. But the pressure comes is if we don't win the league and we end up fifth. Okay, but if we're challenging this season, and if we're challenging in the Champions League, then that means that we're on the right track, because this is a whole set of players now. And in terms of the money, I know people don't like net spend, but that's the reality. Okay, is our net spend, if you look at the Premier League table, our net spend is lower than Aston Villa, right? So the club is run phenomenally well. And so I think, yeah, we've splurged money. People forget that we brought in about £250 million as well. So that the net spend was very healthy. And we're not going to do this now in January. We're not going to spend £300-400 million next summer. So, we've set ourselves up now for the next 4 or 5 years. And I don't think I don't think the demand on Slot is, if you don't win the Premier League, you're out. It's like, we've got to be competitive. We've got to be up there. We've got to be competitive. And yes, we're aiming to win, but I don't think there is this kind of this feeling that if we don't win the Premier League because of the money that we spent, it's going to be a failure.
I do want to say, I think one of the reasons we haven't been doing as well this season is not because of the players we brought in. I think one of the biggest names that have been getting away with it is Mo Salah, because he's only got 1 goal from open play all season in the Premier League. And his performance against Chelsea, when Wirtz did that insane flick where he did a 360 spin and flicked it on to Salah at full speed of the game during a counter-attack, and then he just scuffs it, you can say what you want about his history, but this season I can't defend.
I'm just looking at Sam's face, because he's like, he must be, I wish we could have got thought balloons. Listen to these lot.
No,
they're moaning about Mo Salah.
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm thinking.
It's exactly what you were thinking.
I don't care. He's only got 1 goal from open play.
It is quite refreshing to hear a Liverpool fan actually speak badly of Mo Salah for once. I mean, you never normally hear that.
It's annoying to me that everyone's focusing on Wirtz. Everyone's focusing on Wirtz. Salah's only got 1 goal from open play, and it was a meaningless goal at the end of a match, like in the 95th minute when we were already winning. Granted, it was a good goal, but still. But Salah, that Chelsea game has really annoyed me, and it's really upset me, because Wirtz did this insane flick onto him and put him wide open in like hardly any pressure, and he just scuffs it wide. He had a couple of incidents where he came in off the right-hand side and just sliced it aimlessly wide of the goal as well. He did that a few times, or he did a bad pass, and all of the talk has been about Wirtz and Isak, but Salah has been, and by the way, Wirtz didn't even start against Chelsea. He came on as a sub and kind of improved our counterattacks in a way. But Jesse, are you not thinking the same as me? Because I mean, your reaction was very contradictory to my thinking.
Yeah, no, I'm not thinking that at all. I think, again, you've got to put it into context that you've got Salah, and I'm not saying that, he's performed every season, so, cut him some slack. Be that as it may, but I think there's a tactical reason there, and that is you've had Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's been on that side for the last, 5-6 seasons, and we've had a style of play, and we've never had, in that period, fullbacks who have been overlapping Mo Salah or underlapping, and so there is this kind of tactical shift that that Salah has to kind of work out, and Slot's got to work out primarily, and so I don't see this as a huge criticism of him. At the end of the day, he's a human being. I think that if he's not scoring after 2 or 3 games, then Yeah, absolutely. You might see a downturn in performances, but I still see that him playing a massive role. But Tom, I wanted to ask you quickly in terms of like Sunday's game. What do you think United have got to do? Because I honestly think that the first 20 minutes are crucial. I think if United start well and they start solid, then they're in the game. But what do you think they've got to do to get a positive result at Anfield, which is either a draw or a win?
Well, it's just settling into the game to begin with, I would say, with that back line, because if United start by playing 11 players behind the ball, I think that could be what will get them through the first 20 minutes. They don't need to dominate the ball. In most occasions, United don't dominate the ball anyway, because they're the kind of counter-attacking team that's gradually trying to sort of play more creatively in the middle of the park, but their focus should be more on the wings. But I've never been that confident on the wings at the moment because of the lack of quality with the balls going in from United. It feels to me like we have to go through the middle of the park in order to get a decent chance on goal. But it's like you've just mentioned there. I think it's more about just keeping the discipline, staying tight. I think that's going to be like a man-to-man thing. Just staying tight. Don't allow those in the midfield to have all the time in the world with the ball they've got. Close them down. I mean, you don't need to close them down all the time. There are times where you need to back off because each United player's only got so much stamina to get through the whole match. But if United can just keep Liverpool honest, keep Salah honest, and actually expose the weaknesses. We spoke about wing-backs and full-backs. I think if you expose the wing-backs, because if you remember last season, Alexander-Arnold was exposed, really. He did not have a good game in the corresponding fixture last season. I think if United can maybe expose that on the wings again, then that would be fantastic. And then that way Liverpool have got a problem. United needs to create as much problems as possible so that Liverpool aren't going to have the day of days, really, where they could end up thrashing them like 4-0 or 7-0 or whatever. I think if we can get a good game out of it, I think the performance will matter a lot, just as maybe as it would do if it was against Arsenal on the opening weekend of the season. But there's no doubt that we need to get something out of it. And I'm confident that all of a sudden on the day, I'm thinking like a 0-0 draw. Even if it's like the most boring of football that both teams are going to end up playing, I'll happily take it.
And I think just one more point I want to make about Sunday as well is the fact that Liverpool could be without Ibrahima Konate because he withdrew from the France squad due to a thigh injury, which leads me to believe, Jesse, that we might see Joe Gomez return to the back line unless we play Gravenberch or Endo or someone out of position.
Those two are a doubt as well. Endo's definitely not fit.
That's right. Yeah,
he's withdrawn from the Japan squad, and Gravenberch, which is for me the big worry, he didn't come out for the second half of their game against Finland. I think it was Netherlands, and he was complaining of a tight hamstring, and so he's a doubt, I would say, and so is Konate. But you know what? I don't really have any issues with Joe Gomez coming in at centre back next to Van Dijk. That's the title-winning centre-back pairing. I've got no issues with that. But for me, the bigger worry is if Gravenberch doesn't play. But I think it almost then forces Slot's hand that you've got Szoboszlai and McAllister and Wirtz as the midfield. If Gravenberch,
Curtis Jones could come in as a holding midfielder.
Yeah, that's a good shout as well because he's had a good start to the season. So that and it's a Liverpool Man United game, and I think you need a Scouser in the team. You had to pick up a couple of yellow cards, maybe a red card if we're winning 4-0.
That would be good.
Look, lads, and I know like we're doing the whole thing that United could do something, Liverpool not on the greatest form. Come on, lad. United right now, we are rubbish. We are absolutely rubbish. So if you turn up just half as good as you normally are, we will lose. And we might not get battered as I think we probably will. It might be a 2-0 or a 2-1 or whatever. But we're going to lose. Last year,
Give us a score prediction then.
My score prediction, if you're putting me on the spot, I'd go I'd go 3-0 Liverpool.
Oh my word!
I know I said this, and all United fans said this last season at Anfield, and a bloody miracle happened. But lightning doesn't strike twice, so unfortunately, I just don't see a single chance for us.
Okay, Tom.
I'm going to be ambitious to say 0-0.
0-0. I don't think it will be 0-0. I think it's more likely to be a 2-2 if it's a draw, in my opinion. But I'm gonna go for 3-2 to Liverpool. I'm seeing a high scorer. And Jesse, your prediction?
I'm going to say more hope than in conviction, but I think we're going to come back really determined after the international break, and I think we're going to win 2-0.
Okay,
we better because I'm going to be at the game. So,
are you going to be there?
Yeah.
My word, the "You'll Never Walk Alone" will be huge when you're there. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's wrap it up. Thank you very much, Tom and Sam from the Manchester United podcast, for joining us ahead of what will be an exciting fixture. Jesse, of course, always good to speak with you again. And enjoy the match. We'll see you again for the next episode.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.